Okay, so I wasn't even going to hold this stupid mic. Never mind. Anyway, so after Obama's State of the Union and all of his fancy mumbo jumbo about fixing the economy, making everything better for Americans and our country in general, and it's like, you've got to ask the question, what really would make everything better? What would fix the economy? What would grow the money in the pockets of the average American? What would help us thrive? The answer to that question is actually very, very simple. Reinstate the Constitution of the United States. That easy, huh? Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it would be a drastic change because over the past 200 some odd years, over 225 years, we have seen a gradual decline in the American dream, the American way of life, the American judicial system, the American educational system, the American mental health system, the American health system, and almost every other system, private and public sector, for the past 200 years plus. And you might want to argue this point, but here's a few key things you might want to remember. Orville and Wilbur Wright were over 100 years ago, and they invented the airplane. Then there was William Henry Ford, who invented the car. Now, how many average inventors that have revolutionized our modern world in recent history do you remember? Not a lot, because the basic framework of the education system was give them exactly the bare minimum they need to follow their passions, how they feel best about it. Instead of the current education system, which is test, more testing, and then push them in the direction that the government or the school would believe is the best course of action for them, whether that be a biologist or a chemist or an engineer or a writer or a singer or whatever. And there's also was less of this romanticizing about, I'm going to be a great football player, I don't need an education because I'll just be really good at football and I'll join the NFL and get a good contract and, live the high life, or I'll be a great singer, or I'll be a great musician. And we have romanticized all these careers. But back to my original point, which is the U.S. Constitution would make drastic changes to every system we know. First off, there'd be 90% cut in taxes right out the bat. There would be a massive cut in law. Probably 90% or more of our current judicial system would just be out the window. Bye. Perfect example. I'll pick this up as an example. This is a GorillaPod. I think that's what it's called. This is a GorillaPod. Now, I don't have to pay taxes to keep this, do I? No, because it's my property. This is mine. The only reason you pay property tax on things like your house is because the government said, how can we make more money out of our slaves? That's really what it boils down to, because this doesn't need a background check. This doesn't need a waiting period. This doesn't need taxed for me to own it. This doesn't need insured, even though I'm sure I can find a way to damage property with this, but really, you don't have to worry that much. But property is property is property. Okay? So you got to ask the question, what are my property rights? My property rights are basically, what can I do with my property and not have the government interfere at all? And people will say, okay, this sounds libertarian. No, this is constitutional, because the Constitution was designed for limited government. Tiny little government, basically like a puppy dog. It's there if you really need it, and it'll defend you in a heartbeat, but really it's just your buddy, your friend. You can trust it, like your dog. So, what are your property rights? Your rights to own property is basically, as long as you don't infringe on the rights of other people. Okay? You don't take your gun out and shoot somebody's car. You don't take your car and hit somebody else's car. You don't basically damage people or property. That's bottom line, bare minimum. That's what it means. And you get to keep that property. The government can't tax it or fine you or tell you how to use it or make you get a background check. And the people will say, well, what about guns? Are guns property? Yes, they are. Do you have a right to own a gun? Yes, you do. Is that right dependent on the state or federal government? No, it's not. Under the U.S. Constitution, that is a right, not a privilege. And a privilege has no prerequisites. It doesn't say you need to pass our A, B, and C thing in order to get this item. That is your right to own property, and it doesn't work that way anymore because the federal and state governments are like, we can do whatever the hell we want. You're basically our slave, and we're going to tell you how it is, and you're going to jump when we say jump, and you're going to be like, how high, sir or ma'am? I mean, look at DUI checkpoints. Completely unconstitutional, no regard for the U.S. Constitution, but they get away with it because most people are like, it's easier to go along to get along. Then there's the blatantly unconstitutional Fourth Amendment and Fifth Amendment violations of the vehicle code. You get pulled over, license, registration, proof of insurance. Your insurance isn't there and your license is expired, but according to the vehicle code, you got to have the plate on the car, and the plate is sort of like a decoder thing on your car that they can run and say, well, his license expired. Well, you just gave them evidence by putting a coded number and letter sequence on the outside of your car, directly linking your vehicle, that plate, to your name, so they can be like, Joe Schmo or Sally Sue has an expired license. Yep, we know that because we ran this secret decoder thing. Well, not really secret. That's a Fifth Amendment violation. And a Fourth Amendment violation. You have a right to be securing your person's, house's, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures unless a warrant has been issued upon probable cause. And I'm kind of paraphrasing, but that's the basic gist of it. And it means what you say it means because the U.S. Constitution used to be respected as a contract in writing between you, the people, and the federal and state governments and local municipalities. Basically what that means is it's the same logic as a McDonald's employee goes in one day and says, I want $20 an hour, and if you don't give me that, I'll fine you for every day you don't give it to me. Or I rewrote my contract so I've got this $20 raise and I get 20 sick days a month and I get paid leave for those sick days. Now, how many people you know in any profession can do that and the employer will say, yes, sir, ma'am? Probably zero. But that's what the government's doing to us. We pay every single one of their salaries, every single one of their pensions, every single one of their hourly wages. We pay them to follow the Constitution. And what do? They shred it, and then they tell you what to do because they're the government and you're a puny little opinion and you got to listen. That's not constitutional. That's not a constitutional republic. That's a democracy. That's an oligarchy. That's a dictatorship. That's wrong, morally, and every other way you can slice it. It's wrong. And, of course, people are going to argue, well, I'd rather be safe than free. Then get the hell out of this country. Because this country was founded on freedom. You know, be able to do what you want, providing you don't infringe on the rights of others. And, of course, the counter-argument is, well, where do you draw the line? It's simple. The U.S. Constitution drew it 225 years ago or more. Okay, that line is, like I said, don't infringe on the rights of others. Oh, what if somebody crashes into my car in this perfect constitutional republic of yours? Well, if they're uninsured now, what happens? They get a fine from the government. Where does that money go? The state. Now, do you see any of that money from the fine? No, you don't. So how exactly would it be that much different if instead of the federal or state government getting a cut of whatever problem that somebody had because they broke the law, and you're sitting there going, well, what would I do then? Sue them. They did $500 of damage to your car. You know what you do? You say, okay, sir or ma'am, we're going to court. The cop says, okay, well, you're going to have to either work it out with this guy, give him the information he needs to be able to file the lawsuit against you, or I can cart you off to jail for not owning up to your mistake. And it was like, well, you wouldn't really cart him off to jail. You'd follow the guy home because eventually he'd have to leave. It's not intrusive. It's a pain in the butt, but it's a hell of a lot better than somebody who has less than $7,000 in income, barely making it by in a crappy apartment in the middle of nowhere, and they forgot a few insurance payments and they're uninsured now. They have to pay $500 in fines. They can't afford it. They can't afford even to pay it monthly or pay it off in any way, shape, or form. So they're like, I got to keep my job. I got to choose between paying a fine and getting kicked out of my house or eating and, continue working. So, of course, they're going to be like, I'm going to work. They get another fine. They can't pay that one either. Next thing you know, they're in jail wasting our taxpayer dollars to what end? Because the vehicle code said so, or the state said so. And that's the same thing with almost anything. People argue about, like, felonies. Oh, well, it's a good thing we have felons. No, it's not. because your rights are not dependent on the state. They can't take something away they didn't give you in the first place. The Constitution merely outlined that these rights exist and they must respect them, which means you cannot lose a right to vote. You cannot lose a right to, like, where is it? Where did I put it? Did I leave it in the car? Or, where's my right? I lost it. No, they took it. They had no right to take it, but they said, no, you can't do this anymore because we said so. No, I'm sorry. But I didn't say that I didn't want the right anymore, and I didn't sign anything saying I didn't have that right, and I'm not dead, so I can't lose something you didn't give me. That's what a right is. So the felonies, they're out the window. And so if somebody commits murder of the first degree, premeditated, well, you killed somebody, you took their life, and you should sit in jail for the rest of yours. Or some other comparable punishment. I don't know, maybe the death penalty. It depends how heinous the act was. That should be reserved only for the most heinous of criminals. And that's another thing. The judicial system used to be about punishing evildoers, those who are commits acts that are completely morally irreprehensible. You do this and you rape somebody, or you steal everything they own at gunpoint and then burn down their house, or you murder, or those are all heinous acts against another living, breathing human being or their property. Okay, and that's what the jails were for at one time. And it didn't matter what you did. Once you served your time, you had all your rights back. The only way you really lost them is, well, they're outside the walls, and when I'm out, I'll get them back. It's that simple. So you have to ask yourself, is this something I can bite into? Is this something I can support? Can I support my civil liberties being 100% of the time, and a society that is free and by extension safe? Or do I want to live in a society that is safe and by extension an oligarchy or dictatorship? And Princeton released a study not too long ago where, we actually all are living, we are all living in a oligarchy, because the rich and the powerful control our country. The politicians dictate our laws, even if they're unconstitutional, and we've got to listen. And usually it's this power elite group. And you don't have to be a conspiracy theorist to realize this. If Walmart and McDonald's are donating billions of dollars to the Republicans and the Democrats, and they're writing laws that will help their business or giving them tax breaks, or like the NFL, a nonprofit, and they're making profit, but they're nonprofit for some reason. This isn't constitutional. This isn't a society in which everybody prospers. And the tax code is another thing that brings us down. Okay, so income tax is gone, property tax is gone, tax on sales are gone. Every tax you can possibly think of except one, a per capita tax or a fair tax, which is 10% of your gross income divided up between every branch. So in my perfect world, if I was president, I'd say, okay, the federal government gets 1%. Okay? The state gets 2%. So that's 3% total so far. So how much is left? 7%. That's your local municipalities. Now, what would that do? That means that there is no bureaucracy in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, sucking up our money, getting their big old cut, then putting it back in our local school district or our local welfare program, which ends up creating more problems because you're paying basically to have these people halfway across the state or in D.C. get paid. That's not exactly fair, because if you're living in All America Town and you're paying the school tax in All America Town, 90% of that money should go to that school. But in reality, it's far less than that, because it's got to go to All America Town State Capital, the capital of XYZ state. Then the bureaucrats have to get their cut. The treasurer there has to get their cut. Everybody who's working with this system has to get their cut. Then it goes back to the school system it originated from. That's complete idiocracy right there. If you pay your local taxes, it should stay local. And quite frankly, the federal and state governments shouldn't get nearly as much money as they're getting right now. Another way you could bring back the constitutional republic and change a lot of things is decriminalize, legalize, and deregulate. Now, this is a blanket statement, but we'll start with the pot example because most people can bite into that. Marijuana is not a drug. It's less lethal and less addictive than alcohol, nicotine, and caffeine. So your favorite mocha that you had to drink to get you going again after you had a six-pack of beer the previous night and smoked a pack of cigarettes with, those three things in that 48-hour period are all way worse than marijuana. And this is a vindicated scientific statement. I mean, you don't even have to debate this anymore because in 7,000 years of existence, there had been 0 overdoses from marijuana, and the drug, as the people in government like to call it, has yet to irrefutably destroy a family. They call it the gateway drug. No, it's not really a gateway drug. It's the availability. It's the illegal market itself that has propagated the gateway drug theory, because your drug dealer would be, and this is hypothetical, but your drug dealer would be like, yo, man, I'm out of this shit. You know, I ain't got no pot right now, so I got these Roxys, or I got this stuff called heroin, or some crack, or LSD, or shrooms, you know, something else to get you high and get you happy. So what do you want to get since I'm out? And I want your $20. You see where the problem is? It's the same principle as saying, I'm going to Walmart for a power drill, and you come out with your favorite movie, some popcorn, a DVD, the power drill, which you went there for the first place to get. And you come out and say, why did I get, oh man, this power drill is a gateway to buying all this other stuff. No, it's because you went to a store with all this other stuff. So you'd go into a dispensary in Washington or Colorado. Do you think they're going to have heroin up on the wall when they're out of pot? No. They just sell pot. And you can take a history book and look back and flip through the times and be like, okay, at one time you could buy marijuana cigarettes, a pack of cigarettes, Coca-Cola with cocaine in it. This is another historical fact. You don't have to take my word for it. There's Google, so it's really hard to lie. But you get the cocaine, you get the marijuana, you get the alcohol all in one go at your local drugstore. I mean, this stuff used to be commonplace. Everybody used it, not like even in a recreational sense. Just if you had a really bad cough and you had the heroin cough medicine at one time to ease your cough. It's like, it's not that it exists and that people really abuse it more now. It's that aspect of our society has a spotlight on it. The news is like, look at all these bad people doing drugs and doing all these crimes. How many of these people actually hurt people? Okay? And it doesn't matter what your drug you're doing. But I'm getting ahead of myself. This is another subject for another time. The deregulation is a big thing because we're going back to this example. This is property. If I wanted to sell this, I shouldn't have to pay the government a cut because it's my property and the profit is mine. Okay? So at the end of the year, I made more, so that 10% goes a little bit longer than any other. But this is my property. I want to sell it. I can do that without taxation. This is a constitutional republic we're talking about. So then we ask, well, what about like your favorite restaurant? Well, they got to pay anywhere between $3,000 and $11,000 for a liquor license if they want to sell beer. They've got to pay a few hundred to a few thousand to get up and running, and this is a very conservative estimate. It probably is a way more because I know it's probably $500 just to get a meat grinder to grind your own burgers. And that's not the price of the grinder. That's not the price of the installation or the work or the labor. That's the price they have to pay the municipality or state so that they can give them permission to do what they know how to do in the first place. See the fallacy here? Are we starting to get just how stupid our federal and state and local governments are? How irresponsible, corrupt, and disrespectful they are? How much they treat you like slaves and me like slaves? And don't take this wrong way. If you're think that I'm being biased in any way towards any individual group of people, you're way off base. We are all slaves in the eyes of the government. You don't have rights, you have privileges. That's all you have, and that's all you've had since you've been born. And you've been told otherwise because the narrative is that, you're going to be treated okay. The government's going to respect you. but really all you have is privileges, and you have to follow every one of their tiny, peeny, little bitty rules to keep those privileges. And if you don't believe me, go buy what's called the Criminal Code book, or Code of Criminal Procedure, I think. That's basically all the stuff that they have made over the years and put together. And there are so many laws that you literally could spend years trying to figure them all out. Because the Constitution, here, I'll give you an example. You ready for this? This is going to blow your mind. Okay. These are actually a little bigger than the ones in Harrisburg, the criminal procedure. But still, look. We've got the Pennsylvania Constitution, and it's that thick. This is a lot about your rights and how government's supposed to work, right? Then we got the Federal Constitution of the United States. And it's also, this one actually is bigger than it's supposed to be because it's got like a directory in it to all the words and everything. Look at that. That's tiny, okay? And I think I might have it in here too, so hold on. No, I don't. I'd have to get up and grab it, but I have a book that's about this thick. It's Black's Law Dictionary. It helps you define what these two books mean, the constitutions. And this is my state constitution and federal constitution. But it helps define what they are, and that book's about that thick. That's our basic dictionary for how to understand law. Well, that's about the same size of the Code of Criminal Procedure book. In other words, you've seen these two books. They're tiny, and our rights are stipulated in here. Our rights are outlined in here. And this is federal, and it's telling you these are what the rights are. Your rights come from your creator, if you're a Christian, or whatever other religion you may choose to be part of. Or if you're an atheist, they come from nature. In either case, there's only one way to really lose those rights, and that is dying. Whenever that time comes. So the question becomes, do you really want to live in this society that's so backwards and disrespectful and demeaning? Because that's what it is. And I'm going to move on to some more examples, because this is really getting me heated, just knowing and thinking about how asinine Obama is, and the Democrats and the Republicans and the liberals, and even the so-called conservatives that can be just as bad, and people who have no respect for the Constitution. They're highly opinionated. They go all over the spectrum, but they're right and we're wrong. Well, here's the thing. A free society is a just society. A just society respects the rights of its people, whether they be male, female, black, white, gay, straight, whatever. Whatever your choice is in life, you have equal rights. But that's not what we're seeing here. That's not what we're getting. That's not what we have. And without it, you have a poor people with very little morality. And this is back to the argument where we don't even teach morality like we should in schools. At one time, we were taught the Ten Commandments. Not because it was a state religion, because it says no state religion. We didn't say you had to be a Christian. We just said, if you don't have this at home, if you're not taught this at home, this is the basic moral code you can live by. Don't kill, don't murder, don't sleep with your neighbor's wife, don't adulterize. And we created chivalrous men who respected women. And I'm not saying our society was perfect, but it was a hell of a lot better when a guy would, go on at least 3 dates, maybe more, and maybe even just date for 6 to 7 months or a year before they even thought about marrying the girl or sleeping with her. Imagine that. A couple that doesn't sleep together all the time. And I'm not saying that I'm perfect or anybody else is perfect on this point, but it was better. It was less disease, less problems, less pregnancies, less early parenthood. This was a very simple prospect. You respected your fellow man, and that's a general term again to any human being. So let's just say that. You respected your fellow humans. And that was the greatest thing about America, because we weren't just tough as nails. We respected even our enemies. If we had POWs, we didn't treat them like crap. We didn't go blowing up churches with 200 people in it in Myanmar like freaking Obama's doing, and killing 2 people, 2 terrorists that were suspected but not convicted guilty. Well, they don't have rights. Well, damn straight, we don't either. If Obama said, you're a terrorist, and this could be anybody watching this, I don't think you're like, they suspect you of terrorism, and you go to your family reunion and they blow up every person at that reunion, is that something you can say definitively is a good thing? I don't think so. I don't think I could say that, because that's like insanity. You really would kill like 45, 100 people just to get one or two? Really? Oh my lord. And it's getting worse, people. It's getting progressively worse. We're just losing those civil liberties like leaves in the wind. And eventually we're going to get to the point where we wake up one day and say, what the hell happened? What did I do? How did this happen? It's because people didn't say anything. They didn't make videos about it. They didn't talk to their coworkers about it. And yes, it gets annoying, but that's what you have to do. You can't sit there and go, well, the British are coming, but, I just really don't feel like getting on a horse and going through town screaming, the British are coming, because, I'll look weird. Well, if he had done that, Paul Revere and his famous ride, you know what would have happened? I'd have been talking to you like this, blokes. Okay, that's what would have been happening. And I'd be saying, great Queen's country. It's just a beautiful thing that we live under the British crown, We have a parliament. We have cars driving on the left side of the road instead of the right side of the road. Isn't that wonderful? And I'm going to go, instead of my coffee at Starbucks, I'm going to go get my tea and my biscuits and maybe some fish and chips afterwards. I mean, that's not the only thing. We might not be speaking British, but we'd be probably where we are now, but without all of our great history, without the Revolution, without Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, Alexander Hamilton, and the great minds that helped birth a great nation. And a few points I'll leave you with, because a lot of people don't know the true history. There's two people, and I'll tell you the one because I know for a fact one is, that were Republican. The history has been changed so that they're Democrats. But the one I wanted to point out is Martin Luther King. That guy who was able to rally people together in a way that brought about a civil reformation, so that no matter what color you were, you had equal rights. You didn't have the same color, but you didn't need it because you're human and you have equal rights. He was a Republican. And I'll leave you with this. Martin Luther King also did something else most people don't remember. He quoted word for word from this. I have a dream that we as people are created equal, from the Declaration of Independence. But, what do I know? I'm just some guy who has spent umpteen hours and years on the subject of everything from drugs to abortion to constitutional law, which is my latest forte, and how the constitutional republic, the history of it, how we formed, and where we're heading as a country now. And I wanted to voice this because I haven't posted a video in a while and I need to post one, so I'm doing this. But also because I am sick and tired of people like Obama, Holder, Pelosi, and all these politicians of both sides of the aisle being complete asses. And sorry for my language. I don't like cussing on these because I like to be civil. But it's so annoying, and I think most people can agree that they're fed up with the two-party system. It's like arguing heads or tails, heads or tails. Who gives a crap? It's just a quarter. Get over it. Now, we need a third-party candidate, and I'd vote Libertarian or Constitutionalist Party if they had one. Like, I'd voted for Gary Johnson in the last election. I want somebody in there who actually gives a crap about me, you, and everybody else as human beings, not as blacks and whites and gays and straights and every other way you slice the pie, but as a human being. You're not a bunch of random people to the government. You should be human beings. Damn it, human beings. You know what? Let's start a human party. It's basically the Constitution Party with the human thing slapped on. We need that. We need a better republic, and we get that if we all stood up and said, you know what, screw this illegal, unconstitutional bullcrap. I'm opening a business. I'm opening a lemonade stand this summer, and I'm not giving the government their cut. And I'm not even talking to the IRS. If they want their cut, you know what I'm going to tell them? Screw yourself. You lost the right to proceed. You're not following the Constitution. You're not respecting the way our founders envisioned this country. We fought a bloody war over 3% on, what was it, tea. Remember the Boston Tea Party? So what makes you think this current tax system, which taxes us anywhere between 30 and 50%, depending on your income bracket and how much you make and where you live and all this other stuff, they tax the crap out of us. We're going downhill so fast, it's like not even funny. America went from a teetering on the edge to an avalanche. Whoosh, down. We're screwed. But I've taken up enough of your time. I'm sorry this went into 30 minutes, but I just had to rant and get these points across. I can break this down into videos with proof, with documentation, with the legal definitions, with the constitutional law, with everything. Just break this down. And it'll probably be a 20 or 30 minute video in itself for each subject I covered, whether it be the drug war, constitutional law, morality, God in schools, which I'm sorry, we need some, like, you can come in and teach about all of them. I wouldn't care, but you need to teach something because these kids are just, 5 years old and you're talking like a gangster. I'm sorry, but that's not cool. And you're talking shit on people. I'm sorry, you're like 3 feet tall, little dude. Like, come on. Our society, it's so screwy. Okay, well, as always, salute to the veterans who have fought for our country, and whether you're doing the right thing or not, you're still putting yourself in harm's way. So there's that. And to all those people who agree or disagree, please like, comment, subscribe, share this video, comment on it. Please comment. I mean, you don't have to, but, it'd be nice. And if you know anybody on your Facebook page that thinks this would be interesting, share the damn thing. Come on. I mean, I don't need 1 million subscribers. I don't even need 1 million views. But if 3 people get this video and say, you know what, he makes some good points. Never thought about it that way, but, that would help. That would help change a lot of things because those 3 people could talk to 3 people and then advice and keeps going and going and going. And next thing you know, next year everybody votes a completely different way and all the current jerkwads are out of office and our country does a 180 or a 360, whatever. And we're back on track to being the greatest country in the world. But that's not going to happen so long as we remain stagnant and complacent. So get out there, do something. If you disagree, express your opinion, post a video about it. Doesn't matter. Just exercise that First Amendment. Exercise those rights, which are really privileges. But you know what I mean. Ladies and gentlemen, have a great day. Human beings in general of all the world. And I hope you are well and happy and just generally good. This has been Robert again, and I don't know. Have a good one. Whatever.